Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh yeah! Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. And a 19. Beat Rob, Jim, Packard, J. King. Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Caesar on the court to get another ring. Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Everybody in the chat now sing. Still Poddable, Still Poddable, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh yeah! Shut your ass up,
Your daddy's always halfway there.
Welcome back to Still Poddable, the best Celtics podcast here on Al Gore's Internet. I am Sam Jam Packard, joined by Jay King from The Athletic. This is the free show. That means we are on the CLNS YouTube page. If you want to get some savings on some fine products like Prize Picks or Game Time, use the promo code CLNS. And if you want more Still Poddable, because we are a Monday through Friday Celtics podcast, go to patreon.com/Still Poddable. We'll have a podcast for you every single day of the week. We are coming to you after a week. The Celtics really embarrassed themselves in the Cup with a loss to the Hawks, but then followed it up with a very solid win in Brooklyn. And then would you say it was a thrilling win against the Raptors last night in TD Garden?
The last 7 seconds were thrilling. Everything else, I mean, unless you love Jakob Poeltl floaters, I don't know if the rest of the game did it for you. But if you do love Jakob Poeltl floaters, that was the game for you.
And if you like RJ Barrett triple doubles, also a game for you. That's where I think I want to start. So they lost a game to the Hawks in the Cup. Sometimes that stuff happens. The Raptors have decimated by injuries, and I think have one of the worst records in the year this year. In both of those games, the common theme to me was the Celtics getting absolutely destroyed by points in the paint. Just the other team going into the paint and outscoring them by like 40 in the paint. And so the Celtics, they're going to be a team that's happy to trade threes for twos, but the margins really add up if you're going to get that beat by the paint that much. And so what do you see as the big issue here, or the common theme for those two games?
So I thought the Hawks game was not so much about getting beat off the bounce as it was about the Celtics 20 turnovers and giving up 20 offensive rebounds. And obviously when you're turning the ball over, you're allowing teams to get out in transition. Those are points in the paint. When you're giving up offensive rebounds, you're giving up second chance bucket. Those are points in the paint. And so it wasn't like the Celtics were just getting beat off the bounce all the time. And you look at the leaderboard for points in the paint, and the Hawks and Raptors both rank way up there. And I know you don't think that about the Raptors because they're bad. They're going to lose a ton of games, but they put a lot of pressure on you. They can get to the Cup. The Hawks, obviously they didn't have Trae Young, but it's like Dyson Daniels is a big physical young dude. He's going to get to the Cup. Jalen Johnson, big physical young dude. He's going to get to the Cup. And so I think some of it was just the matchups, and some of it is probably that the Celtics, superior talent, are trying to limit the variance that three-point shooting can provide. If you allow 50 three-point attempts, then if a team gets hot, you're going to lose. And the Celtics, I mean, the prime example of that was game 2 of the Miami Heat series, where Celtics allowed the Heat to shoot a ton of threes, and they made a ton. They got really hot. And even though there was a huge, huge talent gap in that series with the injuries the Heat were dealing with, they won that game. Boston obviously went on to win most of the games the rest of the playoffs, but that was a good example of like what shooting variance can do. And so if you're trying to limit that, one way is to stop teams from shooting at the arc. And if you look at what the Raptors did, they hit a few threes in the fourth quarter, but for the most part, the Celtics ran them off the line. Like Grady Dick didn't get many opportunities. They were very good about like just cutting down the variance. But the problem with that is you also have to stop the paint. And especially against teams like the Hawks and teams like the Raptors, who aren't going to beat you from three probably, no matter how many they take, then maybe there's a shift in strategy needed to kind of just limit the paint first, pack the paint first, and deal with more threes than you're used to allowing.
Do you think it's like a noticeable difference from their defensive approach last year? Is like we're just closing out way harder and letting guys like kind of blow by us, or it's just kind of what has happened so far in terms of early on in the season, just a couple random games?
I think part of it is Kristaps Porzingis isn't there. Part of it is every team is playing smaller and more skilled and trying to shoot more threes. Like you look at the numbers, teams are just shooting more threes, and I think
adjust to like your personnel though you're playing. Like the Raptors are not a great 3-point shooting team. They didn't have a great offense. They have like a lot of assists. They clearly can move the ball. At some point, at what point do you adjust to just like these guys aren't great shooters? We're going to live with this. I guess that's the variance point you made earlier, but it's not like the Raptors are going to kill you from three.
But also, like it took a very bad offensive game for the Celtics to keep the Raptors around. And I think if the Celtics don't have a really bad offensive game, and if they have their normal efficiency throughout the game and make threes early, Peyton Pritchard missed everything for a while. Like just some weird stuff happened in that game that probably wouldn't normally. Then you look at it and you think, look, Jakob Poeltl hit every single floater he took. He went 16 of 19, and it wasn't like for the most part he was getting dunks. He was like hitting just random 8-footers. But
Jakob Poeltl can do that. Everyone knows that's Jakob Poeltl's go-to shot.
That is, Jakob Poeltl can do that. He's got like the little Daniel Tice floater, but also no matter how good you are at that shot, you're not going to hit it 16 out of 19 times. I don't know exactly how many times he took the floater. So if that doesn't happen and the Celtics have a normal offensive game, then they win by 10 to 15, and you probably look at it like, you know what? They gave up a lot of points in the paint, but it was also a way to manage the downside of the 3-point arc for the other team. And so I don't think it's a huge issue yet. Their paint protection, obviously Kristaps Porzingis coming back is going to fix a lot of that. But I think right now some of it is just like the strategy they're using because they are superior and because other teams like a weird 3-point shooting night is one way for other teams to beat them, and they're trying to take that away.
Yeah, it gives them a better opportunity to stay in the game if they're giving up a bunch of twos and they're not making their own threes. And so on the nights when the Celtics are not shooting efficiently, it's still going to be a much closer game because they're still – how many threes do they make against the Raptors? They still made 21 threes. They only shot 35%. So they're still close enough in the game. And they're just going to let Jakob Poeltl score that many points. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. I highly recommend picking Peyton Pritchard overs. That is the real moneymaker this season. And with Prize Picks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And so when my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Pick now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposit and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play only $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts a selected projected lineup up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineup. It's a lot of fun this NBA season. Again, I'm highly recommending you go with the Peyton Pritchard overs. And if you want to do that today,
and save a little with Prize Picks. Download the app, use code CLNS, and you get that $50 instantly after you play your first $5. That's promo code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5. Prize Picks, run your game.
The question for me, and it's hard for me to have these takes because I've been drubbed Queta Hata, but it feels like Queta has become the go-to, I guess, backup center at this point. He's actually started some of these games, and he's certainly getting more minutes than Luke Cornett. You would think the extremely tall 7-footer who can jump out the gym might be an effective rim deterrent, rim protector. What do you, I guess, seen from Queta out there in terms of his effort on the defensive end? He had a great block against RJ Barrett to kind of down the stretch to keep this. I think that was to keep them in the game tied in overtime. He certainly has some moments, but it's not like he's been the rim deterrent, rim protector that Kristaps was last season.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue with Nemi so far is not the rim protection initially, because I think he is a deterrent. The block he had at the end of the game in overtime to set up the Jayson Tatum game winner was fantastic. It's more what happens after he goes for the block. And the on-off numbers can be unfair sometimes, but I think in this case it's pretty representative. They have a defensive rebound rate of close to 73% when he's out of the game, and it's closer to 67% when he's in the game. And I think that's because he chases blocks. It's because he's sometimes out of position, and the faults that you see in him and that you kind of focus on instead
I'm just an observer.
What he's doing.
I'm just an observer, I'm glad the data backs it up.
But I think that's where it's shown up so far with Queta. And obviously, if you're giving up more offensive rebounds, there are putback opportunities. And it's not always his guy getting those, but sometimes it's because he chased after a block that somebody else got open. It's because he wasn't in the right spot that somebody else was able to get a putback. So that's the stuff he still needs to clean up. And he's come a really long way on a lot of that stuff. He no longer goaltends every other possession, which is nice. But that's like the next step for him, is being able to be that rim deterrent while also staying away from the out of position stuff that then hurts you on the defensive glass.
Yeah, it's about picking your spots and not just going for the cool block every single time.
Yeah, and I think like the look with him and Al Horford has typically been pretty stingy. And obviously the Celtics right now are kind of rolling with Nemi at the expense of Luke Cornett and Xavier Tillman. Xavier
Tillman hasn't played in weeks.
Has basically just been, dropped from their rotation, which is with Porzingis out, obviously a sign that Tillman probably won't play too much this season. But I think you're going to have to deal with still right now some of the learning curve that Nemi still has. Like, he hasn't played very many minutes in the NBA. I know he's been around the league on a two-way contract, et cetera, for a while, for years, but he really doesn't have all that much experience, and he's still just kind of getting to know a lot of this stuff. And I think the progress is really important. I think the progress makes it worthwhile to give him more minutes, but you'll also definitely still see some times where Joe Mazzulla will be shaking his head on the sideline because Nemi chased after a block he wasn't going to get and allowed an offensive rebound putback attempt.
It feels like the type of thing to me that if the playoffs started next week, they might go Luke Cornett just because he feels like a more reliable place right now. But like, Cornett's not playing out of his mind where he's like demanding these minutes. But in terms of early on in the season, you want, like, Nemi clearly has higher upside just like athletically, and you want to develop him. And Cornett hasn't been it feels like he's been not as good defensively as he was in the past. Like, it feels like there's just been a lot of highlights of people blowing by Kornet. And so it's not like he's demanding or commanding the minutes that maybe Nimi is getting. But I do think that we all knew going into the season that this was going to be part of, I guess, not necessarily the struggles, but one of the big adjustments the Celtics had to make waiting for Kristaps coming back. On that front, there was some murmurs.
I just want to say, I just looked up the numbers with Queta and Horford. They have fallen off a little bit defensively after a very tough start with that duo, after a very good start with that duo. So some of that was probably allowing a lot of layups to the Raptors.
Yeah, you can't let Jakob Poeltl go 16 for 19.
It's something to look at, like, how does Nimi's impact go? And so far, I think it's been a pretty good impact. I think he has overall done a nice job and earned the minutes that he's gotten. But you're right. There are some moments when he's not as solid as the other guys in the rotation.
And he has some electric moments, like the putback dunk last night. He had another putback opportunity, which I thought he should have dunked and completely smoked
he had 2 Euro steps in traffic that he just passed out the ball that were wild. I don't know where those came from. It was very adventurous.
Yeah, he's a very adventurous man. Speaking of Kristaps, I feel like we got some scuttlebutt about him, like, getting closer to returning. He was in uniform doing some shooting. What are people around the facility talking about the Kristaps return? How far away do we think it is at this point? Has there been any update, or are people just searching for kind of new content to talk about?
I mean, he's definitely progressed some. He was able to do some stuff at practice the other day. Joe Mazzulla said that he's doing reads now, which is basically what the Celtics call it when they sort of simulate in-game situations with members of the coaching staff or whatever. So you're like going, and in his case, as a big man, he'd probably be setting screens, reacting to how the defense, the coaches, guard him. And so that's a good sign that he's doing some of that stuff. I've seen him do some like light contact one-on-one stuff with coaches. So obviously they're being very cautious with him. I think they're going to wait until he is 100% ready to come back. There is no rush. They're 11-3 with a +10 net rating. They're right on pace to kind of replicate what they did last season, even without him. So, but I do think it's good that he seems to be continuing to progress, and that all the reports about him are pretty optimistic.
So that I guess would point to him coming back closer to Christmas. I thought he was definitely going to be out till 2025, but
yeah, we'll see. He said, I forget who he told December as a potential target for him, but I do think they're just going to be like as cautious as possible, and I think they should be, because with him especially, it's like you don't want him to come back and have setbacks. You don't want him to come back and have any risk whatsoever. Like, make sure he's good, make sure he's healthy, and then from there try to build out, hopefully, a healthier rest of the season. He said at Media Day that one of his goals this year is to make it through the playoffs without any injury issues. So considering his track record, that's pretty lofty goal, but also that should be what he's targeting after, not being available for his team for the majority of the playoff run last year.
Yeah. All right. Sometimes this segment is a democracy, but I'm just going to go ahead and make it a dictatorship. This is moment of the week, and it's got to be fairly obvious. The game-winning buzzer beater by Jayson Tatum has to be the moment of the week. Jay, I defy you to give me a better moment this week in Celtics basketball than the Jayson Tatum game winner.
There was no better moment this week than the Jayson Tatum game winner. And especially was great because of how badly he missed.
It was so bad. It was wild. His defender fell down.
It's funny. After, I forget which game it was. It was one of the recent games, and it was a similar play where he was around the free throw line and his defender fell down. And afterward, in the locker room, he was like, it was so weird out there because the guy fell down, and I was just like you don't normally have that where you have so much time. And then it was a very similar situation with the game on the line against Toronto, and he missed not everything because it crashed into the backboard. That thing slammed the backboard, but he missed the rim. It was like it was far too long, far too left.
Far off to the left, like on when he has that much space. He's Jayson Tatum. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah. And also because of the recent history, and obviously Tatum has a ton of clutch makes in his life. Like, you can go back.
I just watched the clip. He watched maybe the one against the Sixers on that cool out of bounds play that they run, that full ATO. One against the Bucks where he banked the three. One against the Knicks, actually over RJ Barrett, kind of early on in his career. I think I saw a stat that he leads the league in game-winning shots or shots in the last final seconds to take the lead since 2019, 2020, which is, here's my question. How do you define a game-winning shot? If there's time still left on the clock, is it a game-winning shot? Because that doesn't feel right to me. I know that's how it works, but if it's not at the buzzer,
I don't know what the parameters were for the stat you're discussing. But
I just told you it's go ahead in the final 5 seconds.
I looked back, yeah, but he had, in those situations, he had missed 11 straight prior to last night.
Oh, wow.
So the last time he had hit a shot to tie or go ahead in the final 5 seconds of fourth quarter or overtime was that Philadelphia 3 you were talking about, which was on February 25th, 2023. So it had been a long time since he had hit one in that situation. And I don't want to overreact to that because everybody misses shots like that. Especially in a tie game. And I think a lot of people misjudge the shot quality on end of a tie game situations. They're always like, why does Tatum settle for a jumper? Why does he? It's like, because he's trying to leave no time on the clock, because that is the priority no matter what, because he does not want the disaster situation where he goes too early, the other team gets the ball, and the Celtics lose. No matter what, you want to leave yourself with overtime, or in the case of last night, it would have been double overtime automatically if he had missed because he left no time. So that's priority number one. And then after that, it's if you have very little time left against a set defense, nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to be efficient in those opportunities. And so it's not something to overreact to that he missed 11 in a row, but it was a notable streak. And, the way he missed the one in regulation to then set up the play in overtime where it seemed like they were running something for Jaylen Brown. And the Celtics said they were basically reads. Tatum could have gone one-on-one. He could have found Jaylen. They could have done different things with that play, but looked like they were trying to get the ball in Jaylen's hands. He falls down, and Tatum's like,
he doesn't get fall down. He gets trucked by Davion Mitchell.
He gets Grant Williamsed by Davion Mitchell, and Tatum's looking around like, all right, my time now, guys. Let's do this. And because he wanted to leave no time on the clock, he danced around a little bit and didn't probably try to make as hard a drive as he would have otherwise, and splashed home a 27, 28-footer. That was a tough shot.
It is a tough shot. It is his 5th 3 of the game. Something that feels like he's made at least 5 threes in the majority of the games here.
Basketball is back in the TD Garden, folks, and it is a perfect opportunity to get tickets to see the Celtics go for Banner 19. I know I'm going to miss being in that building, and so do it for me. Go to TD Garden or go to a whole sort of events going around in the Boston area or wherever you're listening to a podcast. The best way to do that is through the Game Time app. Game Time app is the best way to get tickets on the interwebs. You can get it for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. It's got all-in pricing and shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get seat views with panoramic views from where your seat will be in the app before you buy. There's a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you up to 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
If we were just talking about Jayson Tatum's play over the last week, I think he's done a really good job of distributing the basketball. He's had close to 10 assists in all three of those games. This is not something new with Jayson Tatum, but I think he just deserves credit because he is Jayson Tatum. He's going to get a lot of the attention, and it just feels like I'm not sure what his potential assists are, but it feels like there's a lot of times where he's just doing an amazing job of still making the right play and finding guys who are open. And last night against the Raptors, it felt like he was doing a good job of spraying the ball around. But like you said, not a lot of guys were making shots. And he still ended up with, I think, 9 assists in that game.
Yeah, like last season, he set a career high with 4.9 assists per game. Right now, he's at 5.9 assists per game, and I haven't looked at the potential assist numbers, but it certainly seems like that number could be a lot higher, that the Celtics aren't shooting particularly well when he does find shooters or guys that could pay him off for assists. So I think it's a great distribution start from Jayson Tatum, and he's doing that without much of an increase in turnovers. He has a little increase in turnovers, but it's not like too crazy.
But to add a whole assist a game, like to your average, and maybe that's not sustainable for the entire season, but it does certainly feel like it's that on top of volume 3-point shooting. I know his percentages is down, but he's clearly taking a lot more threes. And so he's going to get those higher point totals plus more assists. It's like,
and the free throws, like for the first time in his career, the Celtics are on pace to finish in the top half of the league in free throw attempt rate. And it's him, it's Jaylen Brown. Those two guys have just been really physical, playing through contact. It does seem like the league is just letting guys get away with far more than they did last season, at least at the beginning of last season. And when those guys play through it and play with the right physicality, I think that's good for them. Like I really think that's good for them. You watch the start of the Toronto game was, I thought, like a really good example of that, because Davion Mitchell can like really get up in you. That dude is quick. He's strong. He's scrappy. He's just a pest. And he was guarding Jaylen Brown. And I think once upon a time, that would have been a really tough matchup for Jaylen Brown. He would not have known what to do. He would not have had the handle to just kind of deal with that. And instead, he just kind of plays bully ball and gets him to the block and drives him and picks up 6 or 8 free throw attempts in the first quarter. And so, yeah, go ahead, be physical with those guys. That they can handle that because they're bigger and stronger and more athletic than you, than basically anybody who's going to guard them. And I just think the way that Tatum, we were talking about Tatum, the way that he's kind of tweaked his game a little bit to take more threes, to get to the free throw line. It's just, he's had a really sharp start to the season. And I think analytically his profile is even stronger than it's been in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's just impressive for both of the Jays. Like they're obviously just are coming off of a championship season where they both had their best year, but they both can kind of continue to add stuff to their game. Whether it's just like being physical and being able to draw free throws, that's never been a strong point of either of them. But like you said, analytically, that's an easy way to win on the margins. And if teams are going to be very, very physical, you need someone who's able to take that contact and play through contact. And at least the start of the kind of early season, I think they've both done a very good job of doing that. Before we get to the final two segments, we got the matchup of the year coming up on Tuesday. And Jay, the question that I've been seeing in the Still Poddable chat, just a reminder for folks out there, if you're watching us on CLNS or listening to the free episode, go to patreon.com/stillpoddable. Subscribe today. You can participate in chat, popping off during all the games. Lots of good discussion on there. But the question in chat that people are split on is, how real are these undefeated Cleveland Cavaliers? I'll give you that. We'll ask you, saying one caveat. 9 of their wins have come against the bottom third of the NBA this year.
So there are two ways to look at this question. Are they going to win
the right
a ton
way
of games?
or the wrong way?
Are they going to win a ton of games in the regular season? I think absolutely. They are a cut above what they were last season, and last season they were built to win a lot of regular season games. The year before that, they were built to win a lot of regular season games. You look at their net rating over the last couple of years, like everything suggests this is a really, really good regular season team. Are they equipped to be real challengers in the playoffs? I think that's to be determined. And I say that without disrespecting what they've done, because Kenny Atkinson has gone in there. Evan Mobley's gotten better. They're cutting like they didn't before. They figured out how to use Allen and Mobley together, which they never did last season. It was a disaster when those two guys were out there last season. Now it's not. They know how to exist. Donovan Mitchell is fantastic. Darius Garland has bounced back from whatever happened to him last season. They are a dangerous team. Karis LeVert, like, you can go on and on. These guys are shooting insanely high percentages, especially from three. But, like, I look at them, just defense in the playoff wise, can Garland and Mitchell both match up against the big wings they're going to need to guard? What happens if they're playing the Celtics and Kristaps Porzingis is in the screening action with those guys? How badly are they going to struggle against that? And also, Jared Allen is an incredible defender. He's become an incredible player. But, like, he's going to be, to some extent, out of his comfort zone when he's forced to guard the arc against some of the top teams that can really spread you out. And the Celtics are one of those. So I still have questions about how real they are in a playoff sense, but I think it's very clear already that they're easily the second best team in the Eastern Conference and have a chance to threaten for the number 1 seed and win a ton of games.
Yeah, I mean, winning 15 games in a row at any point in an NBA season is very impressive. And, like, if you just think about what their pace has to be the rest of the way, like, they're very much set themselves up to win close to 60 games. Like, they could they only have to go like 45-18 or something the rest of the way to kind of get to that 60-win pace. And so I think, like, obviously they're going to be a threat. The thing that's interesting to me is just, I'm thinking back to the playoff series the Celtics and Cavs played last year. And obviously Donovan Mitchell gets hurt, and so he isn't there for the majority of the game. But it gets back to our discussion about the Celtics and the margins. They basically let Evan Mobley live at the rim in that series, and pretty much were fine with that because they knew that this, like, the Cavs 3-point shooting, especially from Darius Garland, who is their, like, kind of biggest outside threat, wasn't going to hurt them. And so I'm curious to see what the approach will be this year. Obviously, Mitchell's back, and obviously it feels like Darius Garland is playing a little bit better. But how much are the Celtics okay with letting Mobley and Allen kind of get stuff in the paint and trying to kind of outgun them on the other end? And then also I would caution against reading too much into this in terms of a playoff matchup, just because the Celtics with Kristaps Porzingis with a lineup that can spread out the Cavs and go 5 out is a lot different than a Celtics offense where they're not really playing that much 5-out. Occasion, it seems like they're really leaning into kind of a double big type of thing. So it just feels like it's maybe not as a lethal 3-point shooting. But I just remember last year from that series, it was just like, we're going to let the ball, like we're just letting Mobley do what he wants because we're just going to try and take away 3-point shooters. Is that kind of be a similar approach for how the Celtics take on the Cavs on Tuesday?
So I think when they did that, it was more so when Donovan Mitchell was out, and they really trusted that the Cavaliers didn't have enough offense to beat them, especially with twos. And at that point, it was like, then you guard the Max Struses and
Dean Wade.
Then you guard all those guys and take away the line, and you're pretty confident that you're going to have enough offense at the end of the day. When Mitchell was in that series, he gave the Celtics as many problems as anybody did throughout the whole playoff run. I'll include Luka in that. I'll include Kyrie in that. I'll include Andrew Nembhard in that. But
the big three, as they call it.
He was phenomenal, and they didn't have too many answers for him. So right now, the Cavaliers' offense is playing at an insane level. They're shooting, I think it's 41.8% from three. Let me check. Yeah, 41.8% from three, which is just bonkers. They have, and it's probably unsustainable. Like, nobody shoots that for a whole season. But it speaks to the rhythm they have right now, and it speaks to the way that they're playing and the style that they've bought into with Kenny Atkinson. And so right now there's nobody playing better basketball than the Cavs, and I'm very excited. I was glad that they kept winning, because I think with them undefeated against the Celtics, like, this is going to be a very hyped matchup and a really fun one. And I think for once it won't just be the Celtics opponent really up for this game. I think the Celtics, because of the record and because of sort of the chat about the Cleveland in the East, this is going to be a game where the Celtics are really up for it, and maybe send a message is the wrong word, but just kind of they should want to let Cleveland know, like, yeah, we're still here. We're still the baddest dudes out here, and your start to the regular season is cute, but like, we're the real boss around here.
Yeah, and NBA Cup standings. I mean, it's that on top of all the NBA Cup.
And on top of that, they are in dire straits in the NBA Cup. They need to win badly.
They need a big
win. Maybe
they
need to win by a lot.
So it's going to be a very fun game on Tuesday. Very much looking forward to that. Kind of like the first real big game of the season, I would say, after opening night against the Knicks. Jay, I'll let you choose your own adventure. Do you want to do the Still Poddable Still, or talk about our good friend Joe Mazzulla?
Let's do the Still Poddable Still first.
All right, let's hear it. All right, look, my first nominee for the Poddable Still, and for the podcast listeners, I'll have to describe it, but if we could zoom in here, this is Drew Holiday reacting to the Jayson Tatum 3. Hands up in the air, 3 fingers, stone-faced, knew it was going in the whole time, and that's just a great moment. And so that is what some people might think is the Poddable Still. But really, the Still Poddable Still is Crazy George, Bay Area sports superfan who is credited with inventing the wave. And Jay, how many times were you tagged in for Crazy George?
Yeah, I was tagged in that quite a lot on Twitter. And quite honestly, first of all, calling yourself Crazy George or going by the name Crazy George with a
Crazy
K
with a
in
K,
it
yeah,
is insane.
Some would say it's crazy.
I am not surprised that a man named Crazy George with a K was the one who decided that just throwing up his hands in the air like an idiot and convincing other people to throw their hands up in the air like an idiot was a good thing to do at a sporting event.
Because how do you claim, like, think about the first guy, if you claiming you invented the wave, how did you convince people to start doing this? Like, how do you convince people
He's
to
a
move
cult
across?
leader. He's clearly a cult. Crazy
You think
George
he did it?
is a
You
cult
think he
leader.
did it though? Because I'm not sure if I'm buying his claim.
It's not his claim. It was the broadcast claim.
I know, but where do you think they got that from?
So I was honestly, that man has done great harm to society. He has done great harm to a lot of individuals that I come across at TD Garden. He has led people astray. He has convinced them that this is a thing to do at sporting events. I've been quietly pleased that no wave has broken out at TD Garden lately.
The games have been too close.
No recent wave. But Crazy George, so many people tagged me in that, and it was hilarious.
I'm looking into the Wikipedia of it. He claims to have invented it in a NHL game in 1979. And he perfected it in the NHL before taking it over to Major League Baseball in Oakland.
What do you mean he perfected it? It's throwing your hands into the air like an idiot. There's no perfecting it.
I'm just reading you the source material, what they says on Wikipedia. But Rob Weller of University of Washington, a University of Washington cheerleader from 1968 to 1972, and later a co-host of the show Entertainment Tonight, in the early 70s, his cheerleading squad invented a wave that went from the bottom to the top row. So north-south wave instead of an east-west. So Crazy George really didn't do anything. He just took it and was like, what if we go this way?
I hate him no matter what. I can't stand the guy. He's done more harm to society than almost anybody walking this earth. Crazy George is just an insane name too. Like, I cannot imagine. I guess I'm almost 40 and still refer to myself as the kid sometimes. But I cannot imagine being however old Crazy George is and going by the name Crazy George. That is, it just speaks to the character of the man. It speaks to the character of the man. So does what he claims to have created, and the culture, the terrible culture that he has sowed across so many arenas and fields and stadiums across the country. That man is a menace to society. And I think to all the people who tagged me in that and think this is a joke, this is not a game. This is real life. And he's brought he's brought evil to this world, and I think people should realize the gravity of that.
At one point, when he invented the wave, it was such a big thing in the 1980s that Wayne Gretzky was like, "Wow, get that guy to the locker room. I need to meet Crazy George," and then invited Crazy George to dinner because he was so impressed with the revolution that was taking sports.
That part I'm not buying. There's no way Wayne Gretzky looked up at idiots in the crowd waving their hands, was like, I need to meet the guy who started that.
No, you got to understand, Jay. They had never even thought of cheering before 1980. Like, they had no concept of organized fandom. And so you see something like that first time.
I'm not buying the Wayne Gretzky claim. It's
on his Wikipedia page, and we all know Wikipedia is a good source a reliable source for all information.
The great one. If the great one did do that, I'm stripping him of his name.
Oh, you have the authority to change?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. All right, let's get to our final segment. It feels like he's good for this every week. This is Shit Joe Says, where we go over the wild world of Joe Mazzulla. I think there has to be one, my biggest nominee. You have to tell me if there's more. Said this in practice, I think on, what was it, Thursday or Friday. a clip of you standing right next to him when he said it, just describing how upset he was with Charles Lee breaking NBA protocol to come into the assistant coach's locker room and give him a hug before the game. He thought it psychological warfare and something he really didn't like. And he said it was not nice to hug him. He was going to knock him off his game competitively. He said Charles Lee knew what he was doing. Hey, I mean, there's video of you reacting to this. You looked thoroughly amused while he was saying this.
So this is like, other than the wave stuff, that's probably the thing that was sent to me most. And I feel like that's become one of my roles at practice, is to just be giggling at Joe Mazzulla as he just says totally crazy things. I think there are shades of truth in what he said. I do believe that once a guy is gone from his roster, from his coaching staff, that he does not want to give anything away, and he dearly, dearly wants to protect his trade secrets. I also think he was totally just fucking around with everybody with what he said about Charles Lee.
That's the biggest question, where you just don't know. He's in this zone of like, I think sometimes I think it's like very perverse, and sometimes I think he's just like doing it because he knows he's gotten to a place where he can say anything and people will be like, oh, that's just crazy Joe Mazzulla. And it's a brilliant place to live in.
I could be wrong here, but here were the tells that convinced me that he was very much messing around. One, he said that he breached NBA rules. He said that Charles Lee, by walking into the assistant coach's room and saying hello to some old friends, breached NBA rules. He also said that Charles forced him to give him a hug. Like, I cannot ever imagine describing another man as forcing me to hug him. And so when you put the breaching phrase with forced me to hug him, it really leads me to believe that Joe Mazzulla was turning it all the way up in an attempt to be funny and an attempt to maybe convince people he's crazier than he actually is. And so on this one, he's going crazy. To rule
he's crazy like a fox.
He was absolutely messing around. Do I believe that he does treat people differently after they're gone from the Celtics? Yeah, I do, because I do think he's a competitive freak and a maniacal dude looking for any edge. But the Charles Lee thing, that was really funny. It was. Breaching rules had me dying. Like, breaching rules by going and saying hello to his old friends. And so he said he forced me to hug him and knew exactly what he was doing. Like, yeah. That was incredible.
My thinking is that
Charles Lee was just this like sicko who had this
sleeper agent,
grand plan and who spent like weeks plotting how to force Joe Mazzulla to hug him.
Being as generous and giving Joe Mazzulla as much grace as possible, I think he was annoyed that Charles Lee came into the locker room because he's like, you're a competitor now and you don't come into our space, and probably had enough self-awareness to be like, yes, this pisses me off, but I also know if I complain about it, it will be pretty funny, and then can kind of play it up that way. So I think it could be both, that he was like probably annoyed that it happened, but knew that like that's him complaining about the breach of NBA rules would also be funny thing to talk about in the practice day, off day media scrum.
A breach of NBA. And also, like, that night in Charlotte, or those 2 days in Charlotte, it was like Kemba Walker came into their shoot around. It was just like chatting with guys, hanging out with guys. And then Kemba Walker went into their locker room after the game, and it's like, was he breaching NBA rules? Was he just
the coaches have different rules,
plotting revenge on his former teammates? I don't think so. I think he was just saying hi to some guys. I think Charles Lee was probably doing the same.
They won a championship with the year before, something like that. Any other notable Joe Mazzulla quotes from this week? The only other thing I can think of is when he was asked about the Celtics new City Editions uniforms last night, asked what he liked about them the most. He said they say Celtics on it, which was also my favorite part of those weird neon green uniforms last night.
Those are bad. They look
like space uniforms.
Oregon Ducks, man. Like
Peyton Pritchard might have liked them.
I don't think he liked them after he started over 5 or over 6 or whatever it was. That was another thing Joe said that I wasn't buying. It was kind of a LeBron. He had a LeBron moment. You know how LeBron says things after the fact and was like, I knew this was going to happen, or like he always, and people say like LeBron capping or whatever. Joe said, I knew when Peyton Pritchard started over 6, he was going to hit the next 2. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You're a man of statistics. You're a man of mathematics. You know that if he missed 6 in a row, yes, eventually he's going to make some, but that might not have an impact on the next shot. It might not have an impact on the shot after that. So you were not – I don't believe you were the happiest man that Peyton Pritchard started over 6, and I don't believe you knew that he was going to make his next 2. I'm just not buying it, Joe.
Well, why didn't you challenge him in the moment in the press conference room? You know, you're the journalist. You're supposed to hold truth to power. You're supposed to hold people account for their lies.
That was a LeBron moment from Joe.
Anything else this week from Joe, or anything else about the Celtics you want to mention here before we wrap up today's episode?
I enjoyed watching the Raptors. They play hard.
They do.
Jamal Shed plays really hard.
Jamal Shed's good. Like, he plays super hard and just intense the entire game. I was impressed by the Jamal Shed minutes in this game.
Yeah, I was just a fan of their approach to this tanking season.
And I like Ochai Agbaji.
They have some okay role players. They're obviously not like talented enough and don't have the real creators and stuff that they need to thrive in the NBA, but like I don't mind a lot of those players. Like Grady Dick is going to be pretty good.
They would be a very fun landing spot for Cooper Flagg.
Shed plays his butt off. Like, I don't know if Davion Mitchell is at all good at basketball, but he plays really hard and picks
He's good
you
at
up
defense.
Yeah, and so I'm just someone tweeted, I forget who it was. I wish I knew. Someone tweeted they're like the most ethical tankers of all time. And it kind of seems right. Like they're going to lose games, but they're going to play hard and they're going to stay in games, and then they're just going to goof them up at the end.
Yeah. I guess
because they're not quite good enough.
No, and that was probably the best game they played all season with the 36 points from Jakob Poeltl and a 25, 15, and 10 from RJ Barrett.
It was so funny. Like the Celtics, there was a group of Celtics in the locker room after the game just like raving about Jakob Poeltl. Like just could not fathom all the shots that he hit. And it was so funny to just watch them be like just absolutely in awe of Jakob Poeltl's performance. Like it was 16 for 19 on really like not the easiest diet of shots.
He was like 15 for 15 at some point. Like all his misses, I think, came in the fourth quarter. He deserves the awe. It was a brilliant performance from Jakob Poeltl, but the Celtics, somehow managed to survive. They are now 11-3, taking on, I think, the 15-0 Cleveland Cavaliers on Tuesday night. That's going to do it for us here on Still Poddable. Again, if you want more Still Poddable, like a recap right after the game of Cavs Celtics, go to patreon.com/stillpoddable. Subscribe today. We'll be here for you every single day, Monday through Friday. We got Jay King answering voicemails. We got a lot of behind-the-scenes content. We got people hanging out in chat. And so we're doing a lot of fun stuff over on the Patreon. Subscribe today, and we'll be back later this week with more Still Poddable.
Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics Still Poddable.